welcome back to my channel. My name's Claire and you are watching another episode of my cake chemistry series, the one where I talk all about the science behind baking and a whole load of other stuff. If you're enjoying these videos so far, please do remember to give them a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications button so that you don't miss any of the latest updates from me. And if you've got any questions or topics you would like me to cover in the future, please do pop them in the comments below or come and say hello to me over on Instagram. Something I get asked a lot is how to make cakes light and fluffy. This is a cake quality I'd like to think that I pride myself in, and I honestly believe it's what keeps my customers coming back for more. However, I remember in the early days of baking, my cakes were not so light. The first couple that I made turned out more like thick, stodgy pancakes. Not great. However, after over 12 years of baking, I've certainly learned a lot. So today I'm sharing my top 10 secrets as to how I get my cakes so light and fluffy. Tip number 1, having your ingredients at room temperature. This is an easy thing to skip over, particularly if you're in a rush and you just want to pull your ingredients out of the fridge and start baking. However, ensuring your butter, eggs and even milk are at room temperature will make all the difference. If you're into science, you'll know that things react more quickly at higher temperatures, molecules start vibrating faster, and at the end of the day, baking is a chemical reaction. If everything is too cold, we're going to slow the process down. Also, they're so much less likely to curdle and will be easier to combine. Let's face it, nobody wants to beat cold hard butter. Tip number 2, if you're using the creaming method to make your cake, actually beat it until it's light in colour and has increased in volume. This is so important because you're adding air bubbles to the mixture which are going to expand in the oven, making your cake nice and light. I definitely made this mistake when I was starting out. I remember making a cake with my dad and my sister. We just kind of mixed everything together without any beating at all. So the cake turned out rather dense and stodgy. So take the time to beat some air into your ingredients. It can take around 5 minutes if you're using a stand mixer or electric whisk, and even longer if you're doing it by hand. Tip number 3, sift your flour. Not only does this get rid of any lumps, it also aerates it and helps prevent those flour particles weighing down your mixture, which you've just taken the time to beat lots of air into. This is particularly important for whisked fatless sponge, for example, because they're so light and we have to be extra careful when folding in that flour. You can even sift it twice if you want to. Tip number 4, and in extension to the last one, is carefully fold in your flour. I know I've just said about the importance of beating together your ingredients. However, when it comes to the flour, we do not want to beat it. Sift it into your mixture and fold it in with a spatula or large metal spoon until there are no lumps left and your mixture is nice and smooth. Overmixing at this stage will knock out some of the air and potentially result in quite a dense cake that is more likely to collapse in the oven. If there is any milk in your recipe, use buttermilk instead. Buttermilk is acidic and will react with raising agents such as bicarbonate of soda, producing carbon dioxide gas bubbles which will expand in the oven and hence lighten the cake. Buttermilk is also tenderizing as it breaks down gluten, so will produce a softer and fluffier sponge. If you want to go and see the full video I did on the functions of milk in baking, I will link it in the description below. Tip number 6, use the right size baking tin. If your tin is too small and you overload it with cake mixture, there isn't enough room for it to actually rise and it's so much more likely to collapse, resulting in a very dense and stodgy cake. However, on the other hand, if you use a tin that's far too large, let's say you're going to make a 6-inch cake but you use an 8-inch tin, your mixture is just going to be spread out too much and you're going to get a very thin and pancake-like cake. Tip number 7, preheat your oven to the correct temperature as stated in your recipe. If it's too low, then the ingredients are going to be very slow to react and the cake may not even rise at all. Too high and it could brown too much or even burn on the outside before it's cooked in the middle, causing it to sink back down after it comes out of the oven. This will produce quite a dense cake. If you want to produce the lightest and fluffiest sponge, check that it is at the correct temperature using an oven thermometer if you want to be really precise. Tip number 8, as well as ensuring our oven temperature is correct, we also want to make sure we bake our cake until it is fully risen and cooked in the middle. I get so many messages from people saying that their cake looked like it was done on the outside, but when they took it out, it was very dense and stodgy and like not properly cooked in the middle because they simply didn't bake it for long enough. We want to make sure that all the chemical reactions have had a chance to take place and the structure has set. Sometimes this means baking it for a little bit longer than stated in your recipe. It does take time to get to know your oven. If you find that your cake is browning too much on the outside before it's actually cooked in the middle, you can turn the temperature down halfway through the baking time or lightly cover your cake over with some foil so that the browning kind of stops but it continues to cook through. Tip number 9, add a raising agent such as baking powder or bicarbonate of soda. If you're using bicarbonate of soda, combine this with an acidic ingredient such as yogurt, sour cream, buttermilk, etc., as they will react together, producing carbon dioxide gas bubbles, hence leavening the cake. Dairy products also have tenderizing properties and will contribute to softening the sponge and producing a more tender and moist crumb. And finally, tip number 10, use a different recipe. Some cakes are simply created to be lighter than others. Those containing fruit, vegetables, melted chocolate and other heavy ingredients will weigh down the mix slightly, resulting in a very moist but denser sponge. The lightest cakes tend to be angel food cakes, Victoria's sandwich and other whisked sponges which contain fairly high amounts of egg. In fact, eggs are one of the most important ingredients when it comes to aerating and leavening in baking because of the properties they hold. And this is why it can be so difficult to get vegan cakes right. In summary, the most important factors are the type of ingredients we use, the mixing method, and the temperature. So those are my top tips as to how I get my cake so light and fluffy, and let me know if you have any of your own to add. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope it was helpful, and I will see you again next week.